Sarah Martinez adjusted her worn baseball cap and stepped into the bustling gun range in downtown Phoenix. The familiar smell of gunpowder and the sharp crack of gunfire filled her senses as she approached the counter. Behind the glass display case, an older man with a graying beard looked up from cleaning a rifle. "What can I do for you, miss?" he asked, his tone polite but slightly dismissive as he took in her appearance. At 5'4" with a slight build, Sarah didn't fit the typical profile of the serious shooters who frequented Mike's tactical range. "I'd like to rent a rifle for the long-range course," Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the gunfire echoing from the nearby lanes. Mike, the range owner, glanced at her again. "You sure about that? The long-range targets are set at 800 yards. Most folks start with something closer, maybe the 100-yard pistol range?" Sarah smiled and shook her head. "I'm sure. Whatever rifle you'd recommend for precision shooting." Mike shrugged and pulled out a Remington 700 chambered in .308 Winchester. "This'll run you $60 for the day, plus ammunition. You'll need to sign the waiver and show me some ID." As Sarah filled out the paperwork, she noticed 3 men at a nearby table preparing their gear. They wore matching tactical vests covered in patches and carried expensive custom rifles. Their loud conversation dominated the space around them. $20 says I can put 5 rounds in a 6-inch group at 800, boasted the largest of the three, a man named Derek who stood well over 6 feet tall with arms covered in military-themed tattoos. "You're on," replied his friend Tony, a stocky man with a crew cut. "But I'm betting I can do better. Been practicing with this new scope all month." The third man, Kevin, noticed Sarah approaching the long-range course with her rented rifle. "Hey, looks like we've got company," he said with a smirk. "Little lady's going to try her hand at real shooting." Derek turned around and studied Sarah with obvious amusement. "Ma'am, you might want to start with something a bit easier. Long-range shooting takes years to master. These targets are farther than most people can even see clearly." Sarah nodded politely. "I appreciate the advice. Mind if I shoot alongside you?" "I'll try to stay out of your way." The 3 men exchanged glances and barely contained chuckles. Tony stepped forward with exaggerated courtesy. "Of course. We'd be happy to give you some pointers. What's your experience with rifles?" "Not much," Sarah replied honestly, which brought wider grins to their faces. Derek gestured toward his custom rifle, a precision instrument worth more than most people's monthly salary. "See, this is a custom build. Match-grade barrel, adjustable trigger, high-end optics. Cost me about $8,000. Makes a huge difference at these distances." Kevin nodded enthusiastically. "Shooting long range isn't like what you see in movies. You've got to account for wind, temperature, humidity, even the rotation of the earth at extreme distances. Most people don't realize how much science goes into it." Sarah listened attentively, asking occasional questions that made the men feel like expert instructors. Meanwhile, she was mentally cataloging every detail of the range conditions. The wind flag showed a consistent 5-mile-per-hour crosswind from the left. The temperature was steady at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. The mirage patterns near the targets indicated minimal atmospheric disturbance. Mike approached their shooting positions carrying a spotting scope. "All right, gentlemen, and lady, you're set up on lanes 4 through 7. The 800-yard targets are fresh paper. Take your time and remember safety protocols." Derek set up first, making a show of adjusting his rifle's many tactical accessories. He spent several minutes calibrating his scope and checking his equipment with practiced precision. His first shot rang out, and Mike checked the target through his spotting scope. "Good hit, center mass, about 4 inches right of bullseye," Mike called out. Derek's second and third shots grouped tightly, and, by his 5th shot, he had achieved exactly what he'd promised, a 6-inch group centered near the target's X-ring. Tony and Kevin both shot respectably, though neither managed to match Derek's precision. "Not bad for a warm-up," Derek said, clearly pleased with himself. "What do you think, Sarah? Pretty impressive, right?" Sarah nodded appreciatively. "Very impressive. You've obviously put in a lot of practice." Kevin loaded fresh ammunition into his rifle. Your turn if you want to give it a try. Don't feel bad if you miss the target completely, happens to everyone starting out. Sarah approached the shooting bench with her basic rental rifle. Unlike the men's elaborate setups, her equipment was simple and utilitarian. She adjusted the rifle's basic scope, made a few minor modifications to the stock adjustment, and settled into position. The three men watched with barely concealed amusement as Sarah took her time getting comfortable. She closed her eyes briefly, took several deep breaths, and seemed to enter a state of complete concentration. "Take your time," Tony said in a patronizing tone. "Remember, squeeze the trigger slowly and steadily. Don't jerk it." Sarah's first shot surprised everyone. Instead of the wild miss they expected, the bullet struck the target with a satisfying thwack. Mike peered through his spotting scope with raised eyebrows. "Dead center bullseye," he announced, unable to hide his surprise. Derek laughed nervously. "Lucky shot. Happens sometimes." Sarah's second shot followed within 30 seconds. Another perfect bullseye, this one so close to the first hole that Mike had to look twice to confirm it was a separate impact. The laughter from the three men began to fade as Sarah's third, fourth, and fifth shots created what could only be described as a single ragged hole in the exact center of the target. The group measured less than 1 inch, a level of precision that Derek's expensive custom rifle hadn't achieved. "Well, I'll be damned," Mike muttered, lowering his spotting scope. "In 30 years of running this range, I've seen maybe 5 people shoot like that." Kevin's face had gone pale. That's not possible with a rental rifle. Something's wrong with the target." Mike walked down range to retrieve the targets, and, when he returned, the evidence was undeniable. Sarah's target showed 5 bullet holes so close together they nearly formed a single opening, all within the innermost ring of the bull's eye. Derek stared at the target in disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" Sarah began packing up her equipment with the same quiet efficiency she'd shown throughout the session. "Just someone who enjoys shooting." Tony wasn't ready to let it go. "Come on, nobody shoots like that without serious training. Are you some kind of competitive shooter? Olympic team or something?" Sarah shouldered her small backpack and headed toward the counter to return her rifle. "Thanks for letting me shoot with you guys. You gave some good advice about the technical aspects." Mike intercepted her at the counter, his expression completely changed from when she'd first arrived. "Miss Martinez, if you don't mind me asking, where did you learn to shoot like that?" "Here and there," Sarah replied with a small smile. "Thanks for the rifle rental." As she walked toward the exit, Derek called after her. "Hey, wait. We're here every Tuesday if you want to shoot again. I've got some other friends who'd love to meet you." Sarah paused at the door and looked back at the three men, who were still standing around her target trying to understand what they'd witnessed. "Thanks for the invitation. Maybe I'll see you around." After she left, the range fell into an unusual quiet despite the ongoing gunfire from other lanes. Mike examined Sarah's target again, shaking his head slowly. 30 years, he repeated. "I've seen competition shooters, ex-military, law enforcement. Nobody shoots like that with equipment they picked up 5 minutes ago." Derek picked up his expensive rifle, which suddenly seemed less impressive. "I've been shooting competitively for 15 years. I've never even seen groups that tight, let alone shot them myself." Kevin was already pulling out his phone. "I'm posting this target online. My buddies in the shooting community will never believe it without proof." Tony examined the rental rifle Sarah had used, a basic model that any gun store might have in stock. "There's nothing special about this rifle. Standard factory trigger, basic scope, probably hasn't been professionally tuned in years." Mike locked Sarah's target in his office safe. "I'm keeping this. Someday I want to find out who that lady really is." Meanwhile, Sarah drove across town to a small apartment complex where she'd been staying for the past 3 weeks. Her temporary housing was sparse but functional, a place to sleep and store the few belongings she'd accumulated since leaving the military. She opened her laptop and checked her email, finding the usual collection of job responses. Most were polite rejections, a few requested additional information, and one offered an interview for a security position that paid barely above minimum wage. Transitioning from military service to civilian employment had proven more challenging than any mission she'd completed overseas. Her specialized skills didn't translate obviously to civilian job descriptions, and she'd quickly learned that mentioning her true background often created more problems than solutions. The apartment's thin walls allowed her to hear her neighbor's television, where a news anchor was discussing rising tensions in Eastern Europe. Sarah closed her laptop and turned away from the news. Those concerns belonged to her former life. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her sister Jennifer in Colorado. "How's the job hunt going? Mom's worried about you." Sarah typed back, "Making progress. Tell Mom I'm fine." It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. She was making progress, just not the kind that would satisfy most people's definition of success. Each day brought small improvements in her understanding of civilian life, even if the job market remained frustratingly unresponsive to her applications. She opened her small refrigerator and found it nearly empty except for basic staples. Her military pension provided enough to cover basic expenses, but luxuries remained limited. The $60 she'd spent at the shooting range represented a significant portion of her discretionary budget, but the brief return to familiar territory had been worth the cost. Sarah had discovered that maintaining her shooting skills required creative solutions. Public ranges were expensive, and explaining her capabilities often led to uncomfortable questions. Private facilities were either too costly or required references she couldn't provide without revealing information she preferred to keep confidential. The evening news switched to a story about veterans struggling with employment, featuring interviews with former service members who couldn't find work despite extensive military experience. Sarah turned off the television, having heard variations of the same story dozens of times. Her laptop chimed with a new email notification. Another job rejection, this one from a corporate security firm that had seemed promising during the initial phone screening. The recruiter thanked her for her interest but explained they'd decided to pursue candidates with more traditional backgrounds. Sarah poured herself a glass of water and sat by her apartment's single window, which overlooked the parking lot of a strip mall containing a discount grocery store, a nail salon, and a pawn shop. The mundane view represented everything about civilian life that still felt foreign to her. 3 months earlier, she'd been operating in environments where her decisions affected international security and the lives of her teammates. Now her biggest challenge was convincing hiring managers that her skills could translate to protecting shopping malls and office buildings. The contrast wasn't lost on her, but neither was it entirely unwelcome. Her military service had provided purpose and fulfillment, but it had also demanded sacrifices that she wasn't sure she wanted to continue making indefinitely. Her phone rang, displaying a number she didn't recognize with an Arizona area code. Sarah hesitated before answering, unsure whether to expect another telemarketer or a potential opportunity. "Hello, this is Sarah." "Miss Martinez?" "This is Mike from the tactical range. I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the rental agreement you signed today." Sarah sat up straighter. "Is there a problem with something?" "No problem at all. Actually, I was hoping to ask you a question. I've got a customer who owns a small private security company, and he's looking for someone with advanced shooting skills. Would you be interested in hearing about it?" The offer caught Sarah off guard. After months of fruitless applications and rejections, an opportunity was approaching her for once. "What kind of security work?" she asked carefully. "Executive protection, mostly. Rich folks who want bodyguards who can actually handle themselves if things go bad. Pays decent, and my customer specifically said he needs someone who can shoot like you did today." Sarah considered the implications. Executive protection work would mean background checks, references, and eventually questions about her military service that she might not be able to avoid. "I'm interested in learning more," she said finally. "Great. Can you meet him tomorrow afternoon? Say 3 o'clock at the range? I'll be there." After ending the call, Sarah allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. For the first time since leaving the military, someone was interested in her specifically because of her capabilities rather than despite them. She opened her laptop and began researching executive protection services in Arizona, trying to understand what she might be getting herself into. The work appeared to involve long hours, extensive travel, and clients whose wealth made them potential targets for various threats. As she read testimonials from other executive protection specialists, Sarah recognized familiar themes. The job required constant vigilance, quick decision-making under pressure, and the ability to remain invisible while staying ready for anything. It sounded remarkably similar to her previous work, just with different objectives and considerably better working conditions. Instead of operating in hostile territory overseas, she'd be protecting businesspeople in luxury hotels and corporate offices. The pay scales she discovered online were significantly higher than anything else she'd encountered during her job search. Executive protection specialists with proven skills could earn more in a year than she'd made during her best years in the military. Sarah closed her laptop and prepared for bed, her mind racing with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider before. Tomorrow's meeting could represent either another disappointment or the beginning of a new chapter that actually utilized her specialized training. Either way, it was the first genuine opportunity that had emerged from her unconventional introduction to civilian life. She'd learned not to expect too much, but, for the first time in months, she fell asleep feeling something resembling hope. Sarah arrived at the range 15 minutes early and found Mike waiting with a man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly out of place among the tactical gear and camouflage clothing typical of the facility's clientele. The stranger appeared to be in his mid-50s, with silver hair and the kind of confident posture that suggested success in high-stakes business environments. "Miss Martinez, this is David Chen," Mike said by way of introduction. "He owns Apex Executive Solutions here in Phoenix." David stepped forward with a firm handshake and an evaluating gaze that reminded Sarah of commanding officers assessing new recruits. "Mike tells me you demonstrated some impressive shooting skills yesterday." "I had a good day," Sarah replied neutrally, unsure how much information Mike had shared about her performance. David smiled at her understated response. "A good day," he says. "Mike showed me your target. In 25 years of hiring security professionals, I've never seen anything quite like it." They moved to a quiet corner of the range's customer area where David had set up a small table with coffee and a folder containing what appeared to be business documents. "Let me explain what my company does," David began. "We provide personal security services to high-net-worth individuals, corporate executives, and occasionally government officials who need protection beyond what their regular security teams can provide." Sarah listened attentively as David described Apex Executive Solutions. The company specialized in discreet protection services for clients who valued their privacy and required security personnel who could blend into upscale environments without drawing attention. "The challenge we face," David continued, "is finding people who possess genuine tactical skills but can also operate in boardrooms, five-star hotels, and diplomatic functions without looking like they stepped out of a military recruiting poster." Sarah understood immediately. Many security firms hired former military personnel whose training was excellent but whose appearance and demeanor made them unsuitable for situations requiring subtlety. "What would my responsibilities include?" she asked. David opened his folder and withdrew several photographs showing various scenarios. "It depends on the assignment. Sometimes you'd be part of a team providing perimeter security for a client's residence or office. Other times you might be the sole protection specialist accompanying a client to business meetings or social events." The photographs showed security personnel in elegant evening wear at charity galas, business suits in corporate boardrooms, and casual clothing at outdoor recreational activities. None looked like traditional bodyguards. "We call it adaptive protection," David explained. "Our clients don't want to feel like they're surrounded by an army. They want to maintain their normal lifestyles while having confidence that someone nearby can handle serious threats if they arise." Sarah studied the images, noting how the security personnel maintained strategic positions while appearing to be ordinary guests or staff members. "What kind of threats are we talking about?" she asked. David's expression grew more serious. "Corporate espionage, kidnapping attempts, extortion schemes, and occasionally more direct physical threats." Our clients are often involved in high-stakes business negotiations, political activities, or simply possess enough wealth to make them attractive targets. He withdrew another set of documents from his folder. These are case studies from the past 2 years. Obviously, all identifying information has been removed to protect client confidentiality. Sarah read through scenarios involving a technology executive who received death threats during a contentious merger, a political candidate whose family was targeted by extremist groups, and a pharmaceutical company CEO who faced threats related to drug pricing controversies. "How do you typically handle these situations?" she asked. "It varies, but the common thread is professional competence combined with absolute discretion. Our clients trust us with their lives and their privacy. Both are equally important." David leaned back in his chair. "Mike mentioned that you're recently out of the military but didn't provide specifics. What's your background?" Sarah had anticipated this question and prepared a response that was truthful without being comprehensive. "I served 8 years, mostly overseas assignments. My specialty was reconnaissance and precision shooting." "What unit?" "Special operations. I'd prefer not to go into details about specific assignments." David nodded understanding. "I work with a lot of former special operations personnel. Most prefer to keep their service records private, and we respect that completely." He withdrew a business card from his jacket pocket. "Here's what I'd like to propose. We have a client situation developing next week that would be perfect for evaluating your capabilities. It's relatively low risk but would give us both a chance to see if this might be a good fit." Sarah examined the business card, which contained only David's name, phone number, and email address. No company logo or physical address. "What kind of situation?" "Technology conference in Las Vegas. Our client is a software company CEO who's been receiving anonymous threats related to his company's artificial intelligence research. Nothing too dramatic, but enough to make him nervous about appearing at public events." David opened his laptop and showed Sarah a news article about the conference. "Tech Summit Vegas draws about 50,000 attendees annually. Our client is delivering the opening keynote address and will be highly visible throughout the 4-day event." Sarah read the article, noting the conference's size and the high-profile nature of many attendees. "What would my role be?" "Initially, observation and assessment. You'd attend the conference as a regular participant, maintain visual contact with our client during public appearances, and watch for anything suspicious. We'd have other team members handling traditional close protection duties." David closed his laptop and fixed Sarah with a direct stare. "The reason I'm interested in you specifically is that your shooting demonstration suggests capabilities that go well beyond basic security training. If a serious threat emerges, we'd need someone who can respond effectively from distance." Sarah understood the implication. While other team members would focus on immediate physical protection, she would serve as an overwatch specialist capable of engaging threats that conventional bodyguards might not be able to reach. "What's the compensation structure?" "For this initial assignment, $5,000 plus expenses for 4 days of work. If it goes well and you're interested in continuing, we can discuss a more permanent arrangement with substantially higher compensation." The offer was more money than Sarah had earned in the previous 3 months combined. She tried not to let her enthusiasm show too obviously. "When would I need to decide?" "The conference starts Monday. I'd need confirmation by Friday to arrange your credentials and briefing materials." David gathered his documents and prepared to leave. "I should mention that this work isn't for everyone. The hours can be unpredictable, the stress level is sometimes significant, and absolute professionalism is required at all times. Our clients are often difficult personalities operating under intense pressure." Sarah nodded. "I'm comfortable with demanding situations. One more thing. If you decide to pursue this, we'll need to conduct a comprehensive background check. Nothing invasive, but we need to verify that you're who you claim to be and that there aren't any issues in your past that could compromise client security." After David left, Mike approached Sarah's table. "So, what do you think?" "Sounds interesting. You've known David for a while? About 10 years. He's one of the most ethical business people I've ever dealt with. Takes care of his employees and genuinely cares about doing good work. Mike sat down across from her. Can I ask you something personal? Yesterday when you were shooting, those guys giving you advice about wind and temperature and all that technical stuff? What about it? You were already making mental calculations before they said anything, weren't you? You knew exactly what you were dealing with before you fired your first shot. Sarah smiled. Maybe. I've been around shooters my whole life. What you did yesterday wasn't luck, and it wasn't beginner's luck either. That was the kind of shooting that takes years of training under very specific conditions. Sarah remained silent, unsure how much she wanted to reveal about her background. Look, I don't need to know details, Mike continued. But David's offering you a real opportunity here. The kind of work he does pays well and actually makes a difference. Just don't sell yourself short because you're trying to stay modest. That afternoon, Sarah returned to her apartment and found an email from Jennifer asking about her job prospects. Instead of her usual vague response, she wrote back explaining that she had a promising interview for a security position that might lead to steady employment. She spent the evening researching Tech Summit Vegas and Apex Executive Solutions. David's company maintained a minimal online presence, but what information she found suggested a legitimate business with high-profile clients who valued privacy. The conference itself appeared to be exactly as described, a major industry event featuring presentations by leading technology executives, product demonstrations, and networking opportunities for professionals from around the world. Sarah pulled up the conference agenda and found the keynote presentation that David had mentioned. The speaker was identified as Dr. Michael Hartwell, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, a company specializing in artificial intelligence applications for financial markets. Further research revealed that Dr. Hartwell had been featured in several recent news articles discussing controversies surrounding AI's impact on employment and privacy rights. The articles included quotes from critics who accused his company of developing technology that could eliminate millions of jobs. Reading between the lines of the news coverage, Sarah could understand why Dr. Hartwell might be receiving threats. His company's artificial intelligence systems were apparently sophisticated enough to replace human workers in various industries, making him a convenient target for people worried about technological unemployment. She found Dr. Hartwell's biography on his company's website. 48 years old, PhD in computer science from MIT, former professor at Stanford before founding Quantum Dynamics 15 years earlier. His company had grown from a small startup to a major corporation employing over 3,000 people worldwide. Sarah studied recent photographs of Dr. Hartwell from business publications and conference appearances. He appeared to be an average-sized man with graying hair and a tendency to wear expensive but conservative business attire. Nothing about his appearance suggested someone who would naturally attract threats, which made the situation more concerning rather than less. She downloaded the Tech Summit Vegas mobile application and browsed the conference schedule. Dr. Hartwell would be speaking at 9 a.m. on Monday morning in the convention center's main auditorium, which seated approximately 4,000 people. He was also scheduled to participate in several panel discussions throughout the week and attend multiple networking events. The venue information revealed that the Las Vegas Convention Center was a massive facility with multiple buildings, extensive outdoor areas, and dozens of entry and exit points. Providing security for someone in that environment would be challenging even with a full team of experienced professionals. Sarah made a list of potential threat scenarios, thinking through how someone might attempt to harm Dr. Hartwell during the conference. The most obvious risks included attacks during his public presentations, attempts to approach him during networking events, and threats while he traveled between venues. More sophisticated threats might involve surveillance of his movements, attempts to compromise his hotel security, or efforts to gain access to private meeting spaces where he might be conducting business discussions. She realized that effective protection would require detailed advance planning, coordination with venue security, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances throughout the week. By Thursday evening, Sarah had made her decision. She called David's number and left a voicemail accepting his offer and requesting information about next steps. David returned her call within an hour. Excellent news. Can you meet me tomorrow morning for a detailed briefing? We'll need to go over the security plan, provide you with credentials, and make sure you're comfortable with all aspects of the assignment. What time? 8 o'clock. There's a coffee shop called Desert Grounds on Camelback Road. We'll have privacy there to discuss operational details. I'll be there. One more thing, Sarah. Do you have appropriate attire for a business conference? The dress code for attendees is professional business casual. Sarah looked at her limited wardrobe, which consisted primarily of jeans, t-shirts, and military surplus clothing. I'll need to do some shopping. That's fine. Keep your receipts and we'll reimburse you as a business expense. The important thing is that you blend in with other conference attendees. Friday morning, Sarah arrived at Desert Grounds to find David already seated at a corner table with a briefcase and several coffee cups. He was dressed casually but expensively, looking like someone who might own a successful consulting firm. Right on time, he said, gesturing for her to sit. How do you feel about getting started with this? Ready to learn what you need me to do? David opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. This contains everything we know about the threat situation, detailed venue layouts, Dr. Hartwell's complete schedule, and profiles of our other team members who'll be working the assignment. Sarah opened the folder and found professionally prepared documents that looked like military operational briefings. Floor plans, evacuation routes, communication protocols, and contingency plans for various emergency scenarios. How large is your team for this? She asked. 6 people total, including yourself. 2 close protection specialists will stay near Dr. Hartwell at all times, 2 perimeter security specialists will monitor crowds and access points, 1 communications coordinator, and you as our Overwatch specialist. David pointed to photographs of the other team members. Everyone has extensive security backgrounds, mostly former law enforcement or military. They're all experienced with this type of assignment. Sarah studied the team profiles, noting that each person had clearly defined responsibilities and areas of expertise. The organizational structure reminded her of military special operations units where every member had specific skills that contributed to overall mission success. What's my specific role during the keynote presentation? David withdrew a detailed floor plan of the convention center's main auditorium. You'll be positioned in the balcony section with clear sight lines to the stage and most of the audience area. Our close protection team will handle immediate threats, but if someone with a weapon appears anywhere in that auditorium, you'll be our primary response capability. Sarah examined the floor plan, noting the auditorium's size and layout. What equipment will I have access to? David smiled. That's where yesterday's demonstration becomes relevant. We need someone who can make precision shots with whatever equipment is available, because we obviously can't bring military-grade weapons into a civilian venue. He withdrew another document from his briefcase. This is a list of sporting goods stores near the convention center that carry hunting rifles. We've already identified several models that would be suitable for precision shooting if the situation requires it. Sarah understood immediately. Rather than trying to smuggle weapons into the venue, they would acquire appropriate equipment locally only if circumstances demanded it. How do we handle local law enforcement coordination? That's already arranged. Las Vegas Metro Police are aware that we're providing security for a conference speaker who's received threats. They've agreed to maintain increased patrol presence around the venue, and we have direct communication channels with their command structure. David closed his briefcase and handed Sarah a hotel reservation confirmation. You're staying at the Venetian, same hotel as Dr. Hartwell but on a different floor. Your cover story is that you work for a software consulting firm attending the conference to learn about AI applications for business clients. Sarah reviewed the reservation details. A luxury suite for 4 nights, all expenses paid. What's my contact protocol if I observe potential threats? David handed her a small earpiece and a smartphone. Direct communication with our team leader, Marcus Chen, no relation to me. He's a former Secret Service agent with 15 years of executive protection experience. Sarah pocketed the communication equipment. Anything else I should know? Dr. Hartwell doesn't know you exist. As far as he's concerned, his security team consists of 5 people. We prefer that our Overwatch specialists remain completely invisible to clients. David stood up and shook her hand. Good luck, Sarah. I have a feeling you're going to do excellent work for us. As Sarah drove home to pack for Las Vegas, she felt a familiar sense of anticipation that she hadn't experienced since leaving the military. For the first time in months, she would be using her specialized training for its intended purpose. Sarah arrived at the Las Vegas Convention Center at 6:30 a.m. Monday morning, 2.5 hours before Dr. Hartwell's keynote presentation. The massive facility was already bustling with conference staff, security personnel, and early arriving attendees picking up registration materials. She wore a navy blue business suit that she'd purchased Friday afternoon, along with a conference badge identifying her as Sarah Martinez, senior consultant with Phoenix Technology Solutions. The fictitious company existed only in David's carefully constructed cover documentation. Her earpiece crackled with Marcus Chen's voice as she entered the main building. Overwatch, this is Command. Radio check, please. Command, Overwatch here. Clear reception, Sarah replied quietly, speaking into the small microphone clipped to her jacket lapel. Copy that. Move to position Alpha and begin area reconnaissance. Eagle arrives at 0800 hours. Sarah consulted the floor plan she'd memorized and made her way to the main auditorium. Eagle was Dr. Hartwell's code name for the operation, and Position Alpha referred to her designated observation point in the auditorium's upper level. The venue was larger than the photographs had suggested, with seating for nearly 5,000 people arranged in 3 tiers. The stage dominated the front of the auditorium, with massive projection screens that would display Dr. Hartwell's presentation to attendees in the furthest seats. Sarah took an elevator to the balcony level and found her assigned seat in Section C, Row 5. From this position, she had clear sight lines to the stage, most of the main floor seating, and several emergency exits. More importantly, anyone attempting to approach the stage from the audience would be visible to her throughout their movement. She opened her conference program and began studying it while actually conducting a detailed security assessment of the venue. The auditorium had 12 main entrances for emergency exits and a backstage area accessible through multiple corridors. Convention center security personnel were stationed at key points, but their positions focused more on crowd control than threat detection. Command, Overwatch. Position Alpha established. Beginning systematic area reconnaissance. Copy that, Overwatch. Eagle is currently at the hotel completing morning briefings. ETA to venue remains 0800 hours. Sarah spent the next hour observing early arrivals and identifying potential security concerns. Most attendees appeared to be legitimate conference participants, business professionals, technology executives, and academics who matched the expected demographic for the event. However, she noted several individuals whose behavior warranted closer attention. A man in Section B repeatedly checked his phone while scanning the stage area rather than reading conference materials. Another individual near the main entrance seemed more interested in observing security procedures than finding his seat. Her earpiece buzzed with an update from Marcus. Overwatch, be advised that local PD reports increased online chatter regarding Eagle's presentation. Nothing specific, but they're upgrading threat assessment to Level 2. Level 2 meant credible but non-specific threats that required enhanced vigilance without triggering emergency protocols. Sarah adjusted her observation pattern accordingly, paying special attention to anyone displaying unusual behavior or attempting to access restricted areas. At 7:45 a.m., the auditorium began filling rapidly as conference attendees arrived for the opening keynote. Sarah used the crowd movement to reposition herself slightly, choosing a seat with better visibility of potential approach routes to the stage. Command, Eagle is entering the venue through the South Service entrance, Marcus announced. Close protection 1 and 2 are in position. Perimeter teams report all clear. Sarah spotted Dr. Hartwell on the projection screens as conference organizers conducted a brief sound check. He appeared calm and confident, reviewing his presentation notes while technicians adjusted microphones and lighting. The man she'd noticed earlier in Section B was now speaking quietly into what appeared to be a Bluetooth headset, but his lips weren't moving in sync with normal conversation patterns. Sarah noted his exact seat location and began watching for anyone else who might be coordinating with him. Command, Overwatch. Possible surveillance in Section B, Row 12, Seat 7. Individual appears to be conducting communications but not standard phone conversation. Copy that. Perimeter 2, can you get eyes on Section B, Row 12? Perimeter 2 here. Moving to visual contact. Within minutes, one of Sarah's team members, a woman dressed as a conference attendee, casually walked past Section B and confirmed Sarah's observation. The individual was indeed using communication equipment and appeared to be providing updates about venue security arrangements. Command, Perimeter 2. Target is definitely conducting surveillance. Professional demeanor, high-quality equipment. Recommend continued monitoring. Marcus's voice returned with new urgency. All units, be advised we have confirmed surveillance of our operation. Maintain current positions but upgrade readiness to Level 3. Level 3 meant an active threat situation that could require immediate response. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly as muscle memory from dozens of high-stakes military operations kicked in. At 8:55 a.m., Dr. Hartwell took the stage to polite applause from the assembled audience. His presentation began with introductory remarks about artificial intelligence's potential to revolutionize business operations, but Sarah remained focused on crowd observation rather than the content. The surveillance operative in Section B had been joined by a second individual who appeared to be coordinating activities through hand signals. Both were now paying more attention to security personnel positions than to Dr. Hartwell's presentation. Command, Overwatch. We now have 2 confirmed surveillance operatives in Section B. They appear to be mapping security positions and communication protocols. Understood. Eagle is 15 minutes into presentation. Local PD is moving additional units into position around the venue perimeter. DR. Hartwell's presentation was proceeding smoothly, but Sarah noticed subtle changes in crowd behavior that suggested something was developing. Several individuals throughout the auditorium were checking phones simultaneously, as if receiving coordinated messages. Command, I'm seeing synchronized phone activity in multiple sections. Possible coordinated group present in venue. Copy that. All units maintain positions. We may need to implement emergency evacuation if threat escalates. Suddenly, movement near the main stage caught Sarah's attention. A man in a conference staff uniform was approaching the side entrance to the backstage area, but his movement pattern was wrong. Instead of the hurried efficiency typical of event staff, he moved deliberately and kept checking over his shoulder. Command, possible unauthorized access attempt at stage left. Individual in staff uniform behaving suspiciously. Marcus's voice came back immediately. Close protection, intercept potential threat approaching stage left side. Sarah watched through her small binoculars as one of the close protection team members moved to investigate. The suspicious individual noticed the approach and immediately changed direction, abandoning whatever he'd been attempting. Command, potential threat has disengaged and is leaving venue through exit 7. Close protection 1 in pursuit. Dr. Hartwell continued his presentation, unaware of the security activity taking place around him. His topic had shifted to discussing specific applications of artificial intelligence in financial markets, which seemed to be generating increased interest from the audience. Sarah's attention was drawn to Section A, where a woman was standing near an emergency exit while speaking quietly into a communication device. Unlike normal conference attendees, she remained standing throughout Dr. Hartwell's presentation and appeared to be more interested in monitoring exits than listening to content. Command, Overwatch. Additional surveillance operative identified in Section A near exit 3. Female, approximately 30 years old, professional attire, conducting communications. Perimeter 1, can you approach Section A for closer assessment? Perimeter 1 moving to visual contact. The coordination of surveillance operatives throughout the venue suggested a sophisticated operation rather than random protesters or disgruntled individuals. Sarah began considering worst-case scenarios and potential response options. Her earpiece crackled with an urgent update from Marcus. All units, local PD reports intercepted communications suggesting coordinated action plan during Q&A session. Eagle's presentation concludes in 10 minutes, followed by 15-minute Q&A period. Sarah checked her watch and noted that Dr. Hartwell was indeed approaching the end of his prepared remarks. The Q&A session would be the most vulnerable period, as audience members would be encouraged to approach microphones positioned throughout the auditorium. Command, recommend we advise Eagle to limit Q&A session or cancel altogether. Negative, Overwatch. Client has specifically requested full presentation including Q&A. We maintain current security posture. Dr. Hartwell concluded his formal presentation to enthusiastic applause and invited questions from the audience. Several attendees immediately stood up and began moving toward the microphones positioned in each section. Sarah intensified her observation as people throughout the auditorium began moving around. The controlled environment of a seated audience was now replaced by dozens of individuals walking through aisles, creating multiple potential approach routes to the stage. Command, Overwatch. Crowd movement is significantly complicating threat assessment. Recommend close protection move to stage 2 positioning. Close protection 1 and 2 move to stage 2 positions. Perimeter teams maintain current assignments. The first question came from a legitimate conference attendee asking about regulatory implications of AI technology. Dr. Hartwell answered comprehensively while Sarah continued scanning for unusual behavior among people waiting to ask questions. The second question came from a woman who identified herself as a technology journalist. Her question was more challenging, focusing on potential job displacement caused by Dr. Hartwell's company's software, but remained within normal parameters for a public Q&A session. Sarah noticed that the surveillance operatives she'd identified earlier were now positioning themselves near exit routes while maintaining visual contact with each other. Their coordinated movement suggested they were preparing for some kind of action. Command, surveillance team is repositioning near exits. Possible preparation for coordinated action. Copy that. All units prepare for potential threat escalation. The third question came from a man near the front of the auditorium who began his inquiry in a normal tone but quickly became confrontational. Dr. Hartwell, how do you justify developing technology that will eliminate millions of jobs while making yourself rich? Dr. Hartwell handled the hostile question professionally, explaining his company's commitment to retraining programs and gradual implementation of new technologies. However, Sarah noticed that several other audience members were now standing and appeared agitated. Command, multiple individuals displaying signs of coordination. Possible planned disruption developing. Local PD, we may need immediate backup for crowd control situation. The fourth questioner's tone was even more aggressive. You claim to care about workers, but your artificial intelligence systems are designed to replace human beings with machines. How is that ethical? As Dr. Hartwell attempted to respond, Sarah observed approximately 12 individuals throughout the auditorium who stood up simultaneously and began moving toward the stage. Unlike the previous questioners, these people showed clear signs of coordination and aggressive intent. Command, we have coordinated group movement toward stage. Recommend immediate implementation of Emergency Protocol Alpha. All units, Emergency Protocol Alpha is now in effect. Close protection, secure Eagle immediately. Sarah watched as the close protection team moved swiftly to surround Dr. Hartwell on stage while the coordinated group of protesters began shouting slogans about technological unemployment and corporate greed. The situation was rapidly deteriorating from a security perspective, though it remained within the bounds of legal protest activity. Overwatch, maintain position and report any escalation beyond verbal protest. Copy that, Command. The protesters had positioned themselves strategically throughout the auditorium, making it difficult for venue security to remove them without creating a larger disturbance. Their chants were loud but not threatening specific violence, which complicated the decision about whether to evacuate Dr. Hartwell. Sarah noticed that while the obvious protesters were creating distraction, the surveillance operatives she'd identified earlier were using the chaos to move closer to the stage. Their behavior suggested they might represent a more serious threat than the vocal demonstrators. Command, original surveillance team is using protest distraction to advance toward stage. Recommend immediate intervention. Close protection, be advised of potential secondary threat advancing under cover of protest activity. As venue security attempted to restore order, Sarah observed one of the surveillance operatives reaching into his jacket in a manner that triggered her combat instincts. Whether he was accessing a weapon, communication device, or other equipment, his movement pattern indicated preparation for some kind of action. Command, immediate threat. Section B, surveillance operative accessing concealed object. Recommend Eagle evacuation now. Emergency evacuation authorized. Close protection, extract Eagle via Route Bravo immediately. Sarah watched as Dr. Hartwell was quickly escorted off stage through the backstage area while conference organizers attempted to calm the increasingly chaotic situation in the auditorium. The protesters continued their demonstration, but the removal of their target seemed to reduce the intensity of their activities. Overwatch, maintain observation until Eagle is clear of venue. Copy that, command. Within 5 minutes, Dr. Hartwell was safely removed from the convention center and transported to his hotel under close protection escort. The protesters gradually dispersed as venue security and Las Vegas Metro Police established control of the auditorium. Sarah remained in her observation position until Marcus confirmed that the immediate threat had passed and normal conference activities could resume. All units, Eagle is secure at secondary location. Threat level reduced to level 1. Excellent work by all team members. As Sarah made her way out of the convention center, she reflected on her first assignment with Apex Executive Solutions. The morning had required exactly the kind of skills she'd developed during her military service: extended observation, threat assessment, and coordination with team members under pressure. Her earpiece buzzed with a personal message from Marcus. Overwatch, report to command for debrief at hotel in 30 minutes. Copy that, command. En route. For the first time since leaving the military, Sarah felt like she was using her training for its intended purpose while protecting people who genuinely needed her capabilities. Sarah arrived at the Venetian Hotel's executive conference room to find Marcus Chen reviewing security footage on a laptop while David Chen sat across from him taking notes. Both men looked up as she entered, their expressions indicating satisfaction with the morning's operation. Excellent work today, Sarah, Marcus said, gesturing for her to sit. Your threat identification was spot on, and your communication was exactly what we needed to maintain situational awareness. David closed his notebook and looked directly at Sarah. That was a textbook example of coordinated protest activity designed to create confusion while more serious operatives attempted to get close to our client. Without your early identification of the surveillance team, this could have gone very differently. Sarah accepted their praise but remained focused on operational details. What did we learn about the surveillance operatives? Were they connected to the protesters or representing a separate threat? Marcus turned his laptop screen toward her, showing freeze-frame images captured by venue security cameras. Separate groups entirely. The protesters were organized by a labor advocacy organization upset about Dr. Hartwell's artificial intelligence research. Legitimate political expression, though poorly timed. He clicked to another image showing the man Sarah had identified in Section B. These individuals were conducting professional surveillance of our security operation. We still don't know who they were working for, but they had high-quality equipment and obviously received training in observation techniques. David leaned forward in his chair. That's what makes your contribution so valuable. You identified professional surveillance operatives who were using standard protest activity as cover for their own agenda. Most security teams would have focused entirely on the obvious protesters. Sarah studied the surveillance footage, noting details about the operatives' equipment and coordination methods. Do you think they were planning something beyond observation? Unknown, Marcus replied. Local PD detained 2 of them for questioning, but they were released within hours. Professional credentials, no criminal records, claimed to be attending the conference for legitimate business purposes. David opened another folder containing what appeared to be after-action reports. What matters is that we successfully protected our client without creating an international incident or compromising his business relationships. Dr. Hartwell was able to complete most of his presentation and maintain his professional commitments. Sarah reviewed the timeline of events, noting how quickly the situation had escalated from routine surveillance to potential threat. What's our assessment for the rest of the week? Is Dr. Hartwell still planning to attend the remaining conference events? Marcus nodded. He's determined to maintain his full schedule. 3 more panel discussions, 2 private meetings with potential business partners, and a formal dinner Wednesday evening. We'll be providing security for all activities. Same team composition? With modifications, David interjected. We're adding 2 additional perimeter specialists and upgrading our communication equipment. Today demonstrated that we're dealing with sophisticated opposition that requires enhanced countermeasures. Marcus closed his laptop and looked directly at Sarah. More importantly, we want to modify your role for the remaining assignments. Your observation skills and threat assessment capabilities exceed what we normally expect from Overwatch specialists. Sarah felt a familiar sense of anticipation. What kind of modifications? David withdrew a new folder from his briefcase. How comfortable would you be with active close protection duties? Working directly alongside our primary protection team rather than providing distant overwatch? The question surprised Sarah. Close protection work required different skills than Overwatch operations, more interpersonal interaction, greater visibility, and direct responsibility for client safety in immediate proximity. I don't have experience with VIP protection protocols, she admitted. We can provide accelerated training this afternoon, Marcus said. The fundamentals are straightforward for someone with your background. Situational awareness, threat identification, coordinated movement, emergency response procedures. David opened the new folder, revealing detailed information about Dr. Hartwell's remaining schedule and venue layouts for each event. Wednesday's formal dinner particularly concerns us. 500 attendees, multiple courses requiring extended time in a fixed location, and several business rivals who requested seating at nearby tables. Sarah studied the dinner venue information. The Grand Ballroom at Caesar's Palace could accommodate the expected number of guests, but its size and multiple access points would create significant security challenges. What would my specific responsibilities be? Marcus pointed to a seating chart showing Dr. Hartwell's assigned table near the center of the ballroom. You'd be positioned at the same table, posing as a business associate. Close enough to respond immediately to threats, but maintaining normal social interaction to avoid drawing attention. That requires a significantly different skill set than I demonstrated today. David smiled. Actually, it requires exactly the skills you demonstrated. The ability to observe everything while appearing to focus on something else. Threat identification without obvious surveillance behavior. Calm professionalism under pressure. Sarah considered the implications. Close protection work would mean sustained interaction with Dr. Hartwell and other high-profile attendees, requiring her to maintain her cover identity while remaining ready for immediate action. What's my background story for the dinner event? Marcus handed her a business card and professional biography. Sarah Martinez, senior partner with Phoenix Technology Solutions, specializing in artificial intelligence applications for financial services. You'll be attending as Dr. Hartwell's potential business partner. Sarah read through the carefully constructed background information. Phoenix Technology Solutions was apparently a legitimate consulting firm that David's company used for various cover operations, complete with professional websites and verified business references. How much interaction with Dr. Hartwell will be required? Minimal, David assured her. He'll be briefed that you're a security specialist posing as a business associate. You'll need to engage in normal dinner conversation, but he'll understand your real purpose. Marcus reopened his laptop and showed Sarah interior photographs of the Grand Ballroom. Wednesday's event includes cocktail reception, 4-course dinner, and presentations by several industry leaders. Total time commitment approximately 4 hours. Sarah studied the venue layout, noting exit locations, service areas, and potential security vulnerabilities. The ballroom's elegant atmosphere would provide good cover for security operations, but its size and complexity would require careful coordination. What about backup support during the dinner? Full team deployment, Marcus replied. Perimeter specialists positioned throughout the venue, communications coordinator in the hotel's security office, and emergency response team on standby in adjacent conference rooms. David closed his folder and looked at Sarah expectantly. Obviously, this represents a significant increase in responsibility and risk exposure compared to this morning's assignment. It's also substantially better compensation. How much better? $15,000 for Wednesday evening, plus bonuses based on assignment success and client satisfaction. Sarah tried to maintain her composure despite the unexpected opportunity. $15,000 for one evening's work represented more money than she'd earned during her best month in the military. When would I need to decide? Now, unfortunately. We need to coordinate wardrobe, conduct training sessions, and arrange final briefings with Dr. Hartwell. Today's events demonstrated that our opposition is more sophisticated than initially assessed. Marcus added, we're also recommending that you remain with our team permanently if this assignment goes well. David's been looking for someone with your particular combination of skills for over 2 years. Sarah felt the weight of the decision. Accepting would mean committing to a career path she'd never seriously considered, working with people she'd known for less than a week, in situations that could involve life or death consequences. What does permanent employment look like? David opened his laptop and showed her a compensation structure that exceeded anything she'd imagined. Base salary, performance bonuses, full benefits, travel allowances, and professional development opportunities that would allow her to expand her skills in executive protection. Most of our assignments are less dramatic than today's situation, he explained. Corporate security consultations, routine protection for business travel, occasional high-profile events. But, when serious threats emerge, we need people who can handle them professionally. Sarah realized that everything she'd experienced since leaving the military had been leading toward this moment. Her frustrating job search, her chance visit to the shooting range, her demonstration of skills that impressed Mike enough to recommend her to David. I'm interested in both assignments. Wednesday's dinner and permanent employment with your team. Marcus extended his hand for a professional handshake. Welcome to Apex Executive Solutions. David gathered his materials and stood up. Training begins in 2 hours. We'll cover close protection protocols, emergency procedures, client interaction guidelines, and specific planning for Wednesday's event. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Marcus handed Sarah a secure phone and identification credentials. You're now officially a senior security specialist with our organization. Everything we've discussed is covered by comprehensive confidentiality agreements. Sarah pocketed the new equipment and looked at her watch. In less than 12 hours, she'd transitioned from unemployed veteran to professional security specialist with a steady income and clear career path. One more thing, David said as they reached the elevators. Today's operation will be documented in your personnel file as a successful mission under challenging circumstances. That kind of record opens doors in our industry that most people never get to see. Over the following 2 days, Sarah completed intensive training in executive protection procedures while continuing to provide security coverage for Dr. Hartwell's conference activities. The remaining events proceeded smoothly, with no significant security incidents beyond normal crowd control challenges. Wednesday evening arrived with Sarah feeling confident in her new role and equipment. Her formal business attire concealed sophisticated communication gear and emergency response equipment, while her cover identity as a technology consultant provided natural conversation topics for the dinner event. Dr. Hartwell arrived at the grand ballroom precisely on schedule, accompanied by Marcus and another close protection specialist posing as business associates. Sarah was already positioned at their assigned table, engaged in conversation with other guests while maintaining constant awareness of potential threats. Dr. Hartwell, I'd like you to meet Sarah Martinez from Phoenix Technology Solutions, Marcus said by way of introduction. Sarah specializes in AI applications for financial services. Dr. Hartwell shook her hand with genuine warmth. "Pleasure to meet you, Sarah. I understand you've been following our research with interest." "Very much so," Sarah replied, settling into her cover role. "Your keynote presentation Monday morning was fascinating, though I'm sorry it was interrupted by protesters. Occupational hazard in this industry, unfortunately. But, I'm told that security was handled very professionally." As dinner progressed, Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation while maintaining her security responsibilities. Dr. Hartwell was intelligent and engaging, discussing technology developments with passion and insight that made her cover story easy to maintain. The evening concluded without incident, but Sarah's performance earned praise from both Marcus and David during their post-event debriefing. Her natural ability to balance social interaction with security awareness had exceeded their expectations for a first-time close protection assignment. 3 months later, Sarah was leading her own security team for a Fortune 500 CEO visiting Phoenix for merger negotiations. Her reputation within the executive protection community had grown rapidly, based on successful assignments and recommendations from satisfied clients. She maintained a luxury apartment near downtown Phoenix, drove a reliable vehicle suited for security work, and had established professional relationships throughout the industry. Her military pension provided financial stability while her Apex Executive Solutions salary allowed her to save money and plan for the future. Most importantly, she woke up each morning with a clear sense of purpose and professional satisfaction. Her specialized skills were being used to protect people who genuinely needed her capabilities, while providing her with the financial stability and career advancement opportunities she'd struggled to find elsewhere. Sarah's phone rang as she reviewed briefing materials for the following week's assignment, a technology executive attending a series of business meetings in San Francisco that would require comprehensive security coverage. "Sarah, this is Mike from the tactical range. How've you been?" "Great, Mike. Working steady security assignments and staying busy." "Glad to hear it. Listen, I've got 3 guys here who've been bragging about their shooting skills and asking if I know anyone who might want to compete with them for money." Sarah smiled, remembering her first encounter with overconfident shooters who assumed her appearance indicated limited capabilities. "How much money are we talking about?" $500, winner takes all. They're pretty confident they can't lose to anyone who walks in here." Sarah checked her schedule and noted that she had the afternoon free before beginning preparations for next week's assignment. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour. Should I mention that you're a professional security specialist now? Let's keep that between us for now." Some surprises are worth preserving. As Sarah drove toward the range where her new career had begun, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few months. The shooting skills that had initially impressed David Chen were now being utilized in sophisticated security operations that protected high-profile individuals from legitimate threats. Her transition from military service to civilian employment had taken an unexpected path, but it had ultimately led to work that utilized her training while providing the financial stability and professional recognition she'd struggled to achieve through traditional job searches. More importantly, she'd found a career that offered the same sense of purpose and mission focus that had originally motivated her to join the military, combined with significantly better working conditions and compensation. Sarah pulled into the range parking lot and noticed 3 expensive trucks with tactical accessories and gun industry bumper stickers. Through the window, she could see their owners setting up elaborate shooting equipment while discussing strategy for their upcoming competition. She adjusted her baseball cap and walked toward the entrance, looking forward to another opportunity to demonstrate that appearances could be deceiving and that real expertise often came in unexpected packages. The familiar smell of gunpowder and the sound of gunfire welcomed her back to the place where her new life had begun, reminding her that sometimes the most important opportunities emerged from the most unlikely circumstances.